The investigator asked Barry to explain the unusual phone activity. He paused, then offered what would become perhaps the world's first chipmunk alibi. "Well, let me think about that," he said. "I was probably walking around my house, shooting chipmunks." In the heart of the Colorado mountains, the idyllic town of Salida became the backdrop for a story that would captivate and baffle the nation. On Mother's Day of 2020, a 49-year-old mother of two, Suzanne Morphew, vanished without a trace. What began as a desperate search for a missing woman soon peeled back the layers of a seemingly perfect marriage, exposing a web of secrets, infidelity, and a trail of digital clues that pointed to a suspect no one wanted to believe. This is a story where nothing is as it seems, and the quest for answers leads down a path of suspicion, betrayal, and a chilling mystery that remains unsolved. When someone goes missing, the first instinct is to find answers. But the case of Suzanne Morphew is incredibly unique. The deeper you dig, the more the truth shifts and blurs. It all began on Mother's Day, May 10, 2020. The official story was simple. Suzanne Morphew went for a bike ride and never returned. To the outside world, her life was enviable. She and her husband Barry had two beautiful daughters. Every photograph showed a smiling, laughing family, the very picture of happiness. Suzanne, who grew up in Indiana, had embraced her new life in Colorado, becoming an avid mountain biker. Pictures show a vibrant, physically fit woman at home in the majestic landscape. Her husband, Barry Morphew, was a business owner, an avid hunter, what many would call a man's man. The night before she disappeared, Saturday, May the 9th, was, according to Barry, a good one. He told investigators they had overcome some recent marital tension. The only account of that evening comes from him. He claimed they shared a nice dinner, made love, and went to sleep. The next morning, he said she was still sleeping when he left for a work contract hours away. But a shadow of strangeness already hung over that Mother's Day. The couple's two daughters were away on a camping trip. Family members later told investigators this was highly unusual. Suzanne was a devoted mother, and for her to be alone on that day with both her husband and daughters, gone, struck them as odd. That morning, Barry Morphew said he texted his wife, "Happy Mother's Day." He received no reply. He maintained contact with his daughters throughout the day, but none of them could reach Suzanne. The alarm was finally raised when a neighbor was contacted. The neighbor confirmed to Barry that Suzanne's car was at the house, but she was not. It was Barry who then made a suggestion. "Well, maybe go look for her bike," he said, "because she's an avid mountain biker." The neighbor searched but couldn't find it. Local law enforcement responded to the scene, and soon they made a discovery. At the bottom of a steep ravine near the family home, they found Suzanne's bicycle. The initial thought was terrifying, but straightforward: a kidnapping. Barry made a desperate public plea, his voice thick with emotion. "Oh, Suzanne," he cried to the cameras, "if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back." But about 10 days into the investigation, a discovery inside the Morphew home changed everything. In the master bedroom, investigators found a piece of technology straight out of a spy movie, a spy pen. It looked like a regular pen, but it was designed to secretly record conversations. The pen, it turned out, had been given to Suzanne. She was supposed to use it to record Barry, hoping to catch him in an affair. The irony was staggering. The trap she had set for her husband had backfired. Captured on the pen was not Barry's infidelity, but her own. The recording held a conversation between Suzanne and a man named Jeff. And from the audio, it was clear Jeff was her lover. The identity of this man was a mystery, but his existence added a profound new wrinkle to the case. The trail of Suzanne Morphew, which had already gone cold, was now branching into a dark, unknown forest of secrets. For months, the biggest story in Colorado was the disappearance of the mother of two. Her face was everywhere. Search teams combed the rugged terrain, even bringing in boats to search local waterways. 4 months in, feeling that official efforts were not enough, Suzanne's brother, Andrew Mormon, organized a massive citizen search. "I'd hoped to find her alive," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "But at some point, you have to realize when somebody's missing after so long, that the chances of that diminish dramatically." The idea that Suzanne may have been abducted sent a wave of fear through the peaceful town of Salida. Local radio host Dan Ridenauer, who covered the story extensively, recalled the mood. "I came home every day and my wife asked me, 'Have they found her yet?'" The Morphews were relatively new to Salida, having moved there from Alexandria, Indiana in 2018. They were high school sweethearts, Suzanne, a homecoming queen nominee, and Barry, a star baseball player once drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays, before an injury ended his major league dreams. After marrying in 1994, he started a landscaping business, and she became a full-time mother to their two daughters, Mallory and Macy. Friends said they moved to Colorado to be closer to their older daughter in college, but there were whispers that the move was also an attempt to mend a fractured marriage. The new scenery, however, did not heal the relationship. In a powerful, revealing text message sent to her sister Melinda just 2 days before she vanished, Suzanne laid her soul bare. "He's also been abusive emotionally and physically," she wrote. "I feel more angry now, anger at what I've allowed." Melinda described her brother-in-law as a dominant force in the relationship. "My sister was a very passive, gentle soul," she explained. "He had a great tendency to overpower and intimidate people to get what he wanted." This portrayal of Barry stood in stark contrast to the man his employee Cody Cox knew. Cox worked on Barry's landscaping crew and saw him as an inspiration. "He was a real cool guy," Cody said, recalling how he often heard Barry and Suzanne communicating on the truck's speakerphone. "She is a sweetheart," he said of Suzanne. "She's almost like an angel, like something you'd see off a Hallmark movie." The news of her disappearance was unbelievable to him. Who would even want to hurt her? Investigators, however, were growing increasingly skeptical of the initial narrative. They believed the bike discovery was staged. Days later, their suspicions deepened when they found Suzanne's helmet nearly a mile away on the side of Highway 50. The placement suggested it had been tossed from a moving vehicle. It seemed less like an accident and more like an abduction. But Barry offered another theory. In a secretly recorded video taken by a YouTuber named Tyson Draper, whom he met at the bike recovery site, Barry speculated about a different predator. "The first night there was a mountain lion," he said. "The officers seen it walk by the car. So we thought maybe she got attacked by a lion." Investigators quickly dismissed this. A mountain lion attack would have left a brutal, bloody scene. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle. The investigation began to focus intently on Barry Morphew. He cooperated, speaking to investigators numerous times, always without a lawyer. He repeated the same story. He came home around 3:00 p.m. on Saturday, May the 9th, had a pleasant evening with Suzanne, and left for a job in Broomfield about 3 hours away the next morning while she was still asleep. As investigators tried to verify his alibi, the spy pen recording led them on a 6-month hunt for Suzanne's lover. He was finally identified as Jeff Libler, a married father of 6 from Michigan. He and Suzanne had a brief fling after high school, then reconnected on Facebook in 2018. From that howdy stranger message, a passionate 2-year affair blossomed. They spoke almost every day, met for secret vacations, exchanged intimate photos, and even talked of leaving their lives behind to move to Ecuador together. When investigators finally located him, Libler was terrified. He had deleted the social media accounts he used to communicate with Suzanne, worried the affair would tarnish her memory and destroy his own family. He asked agents, "Am I a target?" Despite his initial fear, Libler cooperated, fully providing his DNA, phone records, and passwords. His alibi for the weekend of Suzanne's disappearance checked out. He was in Michigan. He was cleared. With the lover cleared, the spotlight swung back to Barry with blinding intensity. Phone records from Saturday, May 9th painted a dramatic picture. Suzanne and Jeff had messaged each other 59 times. At 2:05 p.m., Suzanne texted Jeff, "I'm just in love with you." A minute later, he replied, "Want to strip down and get naked, LOL." At 2:11, she said she was getting on WhatsApp. Then at 2:26 p.m., a text came from Barry, "Done, headed back." No one knows if Suzanne saw that text. She never replied. In the moments that followed, investigators noted that Barry's cell phone began pinging erratically all around the outside of his house. They believed he had returned home, perhaps to a final fatal confrontation. When asked to explain this unusual phone activity, Barry offered his now infamous explanation: he was shooting chipmunks. This chipmunk alibi became a major piece of incriminating evidence. There was no sign of any chipmunk shootings around the property. Barry's attempt to provide an innocent explanation had only made him look more guilty. From 2:47 p.m. until 10:17 p.m. that evening, a span of nearly 8 hours, Barry's phone was in airplane mode, making it untraceable. Authorities believe this was the critical window. This, they allege, is when he killed Suzanne and began the process of cleaning up the crime scene and disposing of evidence. With his phone dark, investigators turned to another source of data, his Ford truck. Using a new technology called digital vehicle forensics, they pulled a stream of information directly from the truck's computers, and the truck told a different story than Barry. Around 9:30 p.m. that night, while Barry claimed to be in bed, the truck's data showed it was put in reverse and moved closer to the house. Investigators theorized this is when he could have loaded Suzanne's body into the vehicle. Barry told police he left for his work trip at 5:00 a.m. on Mother's Day, but the truck's computers showed its doors were being opened and closed around 3:30 a.m. Although a 4-hour gap exists in the vehicle's data log from roughly 400 a.m. to 800 a.m., Barry himself filled in a critical piece of the puzzle. He admitted that upon leaving his home, he took a left turn instead of a right. The reason he was a hunter, and even in the dark, he saw a herd of elk and wanted a closer look. That admission was significant. That left turn put him on the very road where Suzanne's bike helmet had been found. By 8:10 a.m., both his phone and his truck were back on the grid. Data tracked his movements around Broomfield, showing a series of stops at various trash receptacles, a bus stop, garbage can, a hotel trash can, a McDonald's, and a dumpster behind a men's warehouse. A surveillance camera captured him on one of these trash runs. Prosecutors believed he was methodically disposing of evidence across the Denver area. Barry claimed he was simply being cheap, getting rid of junk from his truck without paying a landfill fee. But the pattern was undeniably suspicious. After checking on their work site, he went to his room at a Holiday Inn. When his workers later took over the room, one told investigators it had a strong smell of chlorine or bleach, suggesting a crime scene had been cleaned up. It was from this hotel that Barry learned his wife was missing, and after a delay to drop off tools, including a shovel, he drove back to Salida, arriving at the ravine where the bike was found, appearing by some accounts emotional. The prosecution wove these threads into a chilling theory. They found a deleted text on Barry's phone sent from Suzanne just days before she vanished. "I'm done. I could care less what you're up to. We just need to figure this out civilly." They argued that when Suzanne finally told him she was leaving, Barry lost control. The theory of how he killed her was even more specific. A forensic team found a clear plastic cap from a syringe needle in the family's dryer. Prosecutors believed it was from a tranquilizer dart. Barry had admitted to investigators his expertise with such tools, confessing he illegally sedated deer to cut off and sell their antlers. "I shoot 'em, they go to sleep. I cut their horns off," he said. The prosecution theorized that he shot Suzanne with a tranquilizer dart and that his phone pinging around the house wasn't him shooting chipmunks, but him chasing his sedated wife before she finally collapsed. The apparent scratches on his arm seen by agents seemed to bolster the idea of a final violent confrontation. On May 5, 2021, nearly a year to the day after Suzanne's disappearance, Barry Morphew was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The case against him was entirely circumstantial. There was no body, no blood, no murder weapon, and no eyewitnesses. In a preliminary hearing, the defense team fought back hard. They argued the tranquilizer dart cap could have been in the dryer for years, and Barry's DNA wasn't on it. They produced a hotel manager who said the chlorine smell in Barry's room was a persistent issue as it was directly above the indoor pool. Then came a bombshell that threatened to destroy the prosecution's case. Male DNA had been found on the glove box of Suzanne's Range Rover. It did not belong to Barry Morphew. It did not belong to her lover, Jeff Libler. It was a partial match to an unknown male connected to 3 unsolved sexual assault cases in other states. Suddenly, the defense had a powerful alternative theory. "I'm not your killer," Barry could now argue. "The man whose DNA is in my wife's car tied to past sexual assaults, that's your killer." The judge found there was probable cause to proceed to trial, but he did so with clear hesitation, noting he was viewing all evidence in the light most favorable to the prosecution. Barry was released on a $500,000 bond, walking out of jail with a smile, flanked by his 2 daughters, who have stood firmly by his side. In the months leading up to the trial, the prosecution's case continued to crumble. The judge sanctioned them for repeatedly missing deadlines and failing to turn over evidence, including the report on the mysterious DNA. As a penalty, the judge barred 14 of the prosecution's expert witnesses from testifying, effectively gutting their case on DNA, cell phone, and vehicle data. On April 19, 2022, just before the trial was set to begin, District Attorney Linda Stanley filed a motion to dismiss all charges against Barry Morphew. The dismissal was without prejudice, meaning charges could be refiled later. In her motion, she stated that without their key experts and without a body, they could not proceed in good faith. She also claimed that investigators believed that they were close to discovering Suzanne's body in a remote mountainous area that would be excavated once the winter's heavy snow melted. Barry Morphew walked out of court a free man. His wife Suzanne is still missing. Her sister Melinda agrees with the dismissal, hoping that more time will allow searchers to find Suzanne's body and build a solid case. She had one final message for her nieces. Mallory Macy, she said, your mother would have laid down her life for you girls. She would never leave you. She would never forsake you. She loved you with her whole being. And so the question that began this story remains the one that ends it, echoing through the vast Colorado mountains. Where is Suzanne Morphew?